PFAS is the most pervasive chemical compound you've likely never heard of. But according to experts, it's everywhere, including our water. We first told you about this chemical in an interview with the Water Collaborative last summer. Now the organization has compiled a report revealing exactly what it is and where to find it. Take a look. Drinking water is colorless, odorless, and tasteless. It's almost impossible to detect what we're really consuming. And lately, that's been called into question over.
Residents of Jackson, Mississippi have gone without safe drinking water for weeks.
And over.
Nearly 40 million people across 7 states, as well as Mexico, rely on the Colorado River Basin. As of now, its reservoirs, Lake Mead and Lake Powell, are both below 30% full.
And over again.
When you say, have you heard of PFAS, most people shake their heads. I am pleasantly surprised when we started this project early in 2022. A lot of people said, I don't know what that is. Now we're finding there's a lot more about it in the media. So when you ask people, have you heard of PFAS, a few people are like, I think I have heard of that actually.
PFAS is short for per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. It's a virtually indestructible chemical compound used to make things last longer. A scientist created them in 1938, and they've been dubbed the forever chemical because they take centuries to break down. Not to mention, they're everywhere. You can find them in food packaging, dental floss, shampoo bottles, trash bags, everywhere.
Anytime we wash our dishes, wash our clothes, all of that runs out into their wastewater treatment systems, and it can't be filtered out. As the current technology that most wastewater utilities have does not filter out PFAS. So then it goes right back into our environment.
And in some cases, our drinking water, which is where the Water Collaborative comes in. This is a nonprofit that researches Louisiana's water systems. They also test it for understudied substances. PFAS falls directly in that category because it's not regulated and the chemicals are kind of a mystery. So walk me through the actual process of testing. What do you send people out with? How do they test and how long does it take to get the results back?
One, we use Pace Analytical based out of St. Rose, and what they do is we have the testing kits and we actually bring those testing kits to the water sites. We also test it for soil as well. And then in both of those cases, they bring us back to St. Rose and they give us the results. So it's actually a quite simple process. In fact, here in New Orleans, you can actually get your water tested for very easily.
The collaborative researchers tested water at 31 sites. 5 of them contained PFAS chemicals. It was heavily concentrated in Poincapé Parish and St. James Parish.
The fact that we found levels in the Mississippi River where people get their drinking water from, and we found those levels over 200,000 times the recommended safe drinking water levels is really, really significant in and of itself. We don't know what kind of health effects that might cause. Water utilities, through no fault of their own, don't have the technology, most of them, to be able to filter this stuff out. There are no federal or state regulations around this currently. There may be people studying this, but you don't have to add it to a consumer confidence report if it is being studied.
But it's hard to know exactly what the health risks are because the chemical is so understudied. Can you tell me, are there any health risks associated with it?
There are health risks associated with PFAS chemicals. So with PFAS chemicals, it's found in about 97% of Americans' blood. And the health effects are still being studied with epidemiological studies. It does take quite some time to study because the human body is very complex.
The Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences published an article linking PFAS with weakened immune systems, fetal development issues, and kidney problems. But the research is still pretty new. There's lots to understand.
One of the biggest epidemiological studies in this country was actually done with PFAS being the main center of the study back in the early 2000s, I believe it was.
Wow, so this isn't new.
This isn't new. This PFAS has been around for over 50 years.
Louisiana's government agencies are monitoring the levels in the water and how they affect us. Last year, the Department of Health announced that the EPA would grant $50 billion to the agency's Drinking Water Revolving Loan Fund, which focuses on 3 categories, including the Emerging Contaminants Fund. Lowering the level of PFAS in some Louisiana waterways is part of the mission, though the agency did say the amount of the chemical compound isn't an immediate threat to residents.
So it's been really important for us to gather that data and share that data with anybody that we can and say, hey, here's what's out here.
The EPA hasn't issued any regulations, but they have issued guidelines on how to address PFAS in waterways nationwide. That happened last year. And if you're at home and you're wondering what you can do to limit your intake, you can use a water filter. It won't completely eliminate the compound, but it can reduce it.